Hello everyone, this is Top Guides, and today we will be reviewing Shadows Behind the Throne 2. The age of humanity is at its end. The dark names have awakened. Rend minds, drape the world in shadow, or consume all flesh. Shadows Behind the Throne 2, it's a fantasy apocalypse simulator like no other. Background. Humanity exists on a knife's edge between destruction and delirium. However, their doom is almost certain, because you can't be defeated, only delayed. In Shadows Behind the Throne, you take the role of an ancient, evil, eldritch being, come to destroy mankind. Initially weak, you work by sowing dissent in a complex political environment, taking over a low-ranking noble, and working your way up. Play factions against each other, and support dissidents to provoke civil wars, all the while building up your forces and spreading your shadow. Gameplay. Set silversmiths against winemakers while subverting coastal villages to build an army of Deep One fish people waiting to storm the surface. Rally your kingdom against another while supporting dissident nobles in the other in order to provoke civil war, weakening them such that they make easy prey. Grow horrific fields of fleshy limbs and gnashing teeth to terrify the nobles into failing to realize that your enthralled noble is slowly converting them from within into dark cultists. The world simulates a set of nobles, all with their own aims and interests. They exist in societies and vote to achieve their ends. By proposing votes and voting strategically, you can manipulate them into failing to respond to the true threat. You're slowly developing hidden forces. These hidden forces can take the forms of agents like the necromantic doctor, dark forces like the sunken ones, or more abstract powers like death of the sun, which lowers the global temperature. These are essential to build up, as your actions are limited by your dark power, but your agents can act with impunity as long as they remain undiscovered. In addition, as you grow in strength and power, the humans will begin to notice your threat and try to unite or enact rituals, so stay covert and keep them divided till you're ready for mankind to perish. Start of the game. I'll make a small interjection here that I might have included way too much for start of the game because I kind of described all the different names. But let's go ahead and just hop in. At the beginning, you get to design yourself by giving yourself two different names. The names grant you your special powers, and before I go into them, I will say I place them into two general categories. There are names that help you do mechanics in the game. I will call these secondary names. They aren't any worse than the other names, and in fact, I would argue that they're often better. But I would usually pair them with the category, which is primary threat, which are the names that let you help destroy the world. Anyway, the names are as follows. The Promise of Teeth. Regardless of the prey's action, there is the inevitable fate, the guarantee, the promise of teeth. The Promise of Teeth focuses on politics, which lets you beguile people, reduce evidence, and suspicion. This is quite recommended if you want to bend a human kingdom to your will, make persistent use of your characters, or just want a good secondary name. Next, we have the Merchant of Nightmares. Fear is a disease, spreading from mind to mind by word of mouth, by printed propaganda, and by whispered rumor. The Merchant of Nightmares focuses on creating and spreading fear. This is useful if you want to split and divide kingdoms, start civil wars, or prevent people from identifying you as the true threat, and its more involved secondary name. All that said, I personally have not had huge success with this name and would not recommend it for beginners, as it requires already setting up good threats beforehand in order to use those to divide politics. Next, we have the Wretched Birth. Life springs up in great masses, emerging from the ground and reaching into the world to take its first breath. This focuses on creating a sprawling, fleshy mass. This is useful if you want to destroy divided and weakened kingdoms or provide a primary threat. This is perhaps the most straightforward name and is highly recommended for new players. Second to last, we have Winter Scythe. Each senseless death kills not just the soldiers, but the world itself, slowly sapping the life out of the world as the battles rage. This name focuses on provoking constant warfare and using that to kill the world itself. It is a quite good primary threat name, if a little complicated, as you have to understand the politics of the world. Also, this name used to not be quite as good, but it did just get buffed, so yeah, try it out. And lastly, we have the Priests of the Deep. Creatures raise up giant cities of granite and obsidian, and temples to beings far beyond the reckoning of man. This name is quite similar to the Wretched Birth, with a slightly bigger focus on small engagements as opposed to all or nothing. Finally, and I don't super count this as a name, there's the Omnipresent Darkness, which is all the powers together. It seems a bit like cheating, but if it's there if you want it, and you could be good to familiarize yourself with all the different powers and commands. Once you choose your name, you're ready to start. How this works is you start out with nothing. You're just an evil consciousness looking at a map. But you can sunder minds and summon great evils by spending the dark power you get every turn. Normally, you begin by rending the mind of some mortals to act as your puppet on the map. But as you can only have three, the type of ancient you choose is important. Each kind of person has their own way of infiltrating the establishment and corrupting it for you. Merchants can acquire and sell stock for wealth, then spend this wealth to bankroll the city. This gives the city lots of money, which they spend on suppliers and weapons, and it also increases your standing in the city. The more you fund the city, the more its local ruler will like you. Inspectors can attend parties and rub noses of the aristocracy to increase favor. The more a ruler likes your puppets, the more effective your infiltration attempts are at infiltrating the city. This will unlock different kinds of actions your puppets can perform there, but infiltration leaves evidence behind, which can be found by inspectors. Vampires are the masters of infiltration. They can infiltrate very efficiently, and once their claws are sunk in, they can send the local monarch insane or corrupt them. Infiltrating quickly and sending people insane is my primary use for them. Sadly, they have to feed every so often, and that leaves a bunch of evidence, so make sure that you have another spot to feed that is away from where you're infiltrating. Seekers work to find clues about the truth of the universe and humanity's doomed position within it. A seeker can spend time gathering clues and then present it to a monarch to snap their sanity, or make them give up all hope and become a puppet. They have much more powers, but I didn't use them much. Dark Hierophants are the masters of corruptors of a monarch. Their ability is all about corrupting a noble to your will, so you can use this noble to manipulate the affairs on the national level, voting for legislation that supports your cause and voting against legislation that doesn't, warmongering, etc. My favorite thing to do with a corrupted noble was to make them spew xenophobic rhetoric and incite rebellions to fracture empires apart and cause civil wars and make battlefields, which are very useful for the necromantic doctors. And necromantic doctors are my favorite agent. They go from city to city with a corpse cart, gathering corpses in cities you've corrupted. Nicely can go to falsifying paperwork, to illegally collect corpses, which gives you lots of them and leaves no evidence behind. Otherwise, you can rob graves, which gives you less corpses and also leaves evidence behind, which will eventually lead to a paladin on your tail. You can also find battlefields to fill your cart up to full capacity. The tricky thing is corpses left in your cart decay at a rate of 1 corpse per turn, so you need to bring them to corpse rot fields for storage. A necromantic doctor can create these fields out in the wilderness. A good strategy is to fill the fields slowly to the brim of corpses, then reanimate them all at once, and then the undead will ravage the countryside, leaving ruins where cities once stood. Stories? For stories, I'm going to admit to you, I've never beaten this game, despite my many attempts. It's not that the game is unfair, it's quite the opposite. It's very fair. I often start the game in a medium-sized kingdom, and summon the priest dude as my first agent. I used to just possess any humdrum bishop or count to start with, but have since discovered that bum rushing the king is a lot easier. Send your agent to break the mind of the king, and then possess him. Then enshadow him, and the shadow will gradually filter down and affect everyone in your kingdom. After this, start expanding your kingdom through war and start spreading the hungry flesh. At this point, The humans will start to realize your threat and unite together to strike you down. Form a dark empire and have your flesh declare war and see if you can take them down. Sadly for me, this is where I fall apart, and the humans destroy my empire and rend my flesh. My preparations are never enough, but I know that there are people who can win, so experiment and try your own hand at whatever strategy you wish. Also, I will say that one reason that I might not be able to succeed at all is I do enjoy playing on a larger map size, and I don't think threat scales with map size, so maybe that's something a developer should add over time. Tips. Tips is a pretty new category for me to have, and most of the time it's not really necessary, but a couple important things to know is that to swap between different map modes, the only way to do so is the number keys, and I'll let you explore all of them on your own, but they're worth it. Another thing that is important is that voting actually matters, as it affects people's relationships. In general, it's beneficial to vote with whichever side would win the vote already. In addition, an important way to climb the ranks in your kingdom is to propose votes that dukes or kings will vote against everyone else to weaken their position. Last tip, I recommend leaving one enthrallment open for when investigators are getting close to your agents. Criticism and final score. The game is still in development, and sometimes this shows. The UI can be clunky, and some features you have access to aren't readily apparent. The logic behind some of the game mechanics, while they fully make sense, aren't intuitive. The good news is that the developer is responsive and is consistently updating the game, adding new features like new agents, dark names, and UI. In fact, I myself have submitted bug reports that have been quickly resolved. All this said, they are a two-man team working part-time, so don't expect too fast a development, but they should be finished soon, TM, as they recently started ramping up polishing features and released it on Steam. I'm a big fan of grand strategy games, and this game is no exception. It's a great game, it's a confusing game, and it's not for everyone, but if you've got the time and patience to learn, it's a very enriching experience. I give it 7 Dark Power out of World Annihilation. Thank you guys for listening to the end. Comment on what you want me to cover next. If you want to support me, share this video. Anyways, please comment, subscribe, and smash that like button. See you guys next time. Oh, actually, one more note before I end is that my next video is actually going to be a kind of choice video for you guys. I have 5 different game ideas designed and proposed, and since I just graduated and I have a little bit over a month and a half until I start my job, I want to, kind of bang out a quick little game or coding project, and I'll propose all of them in my next video, and then you guys get a vote, and whichever one is the most popular is the one I will do. Though, if you guys have better ideas, feel free to propose them too. Thank you all, and have a nice night.